Alright everybody, welcome back. We're in the A2A Simulations 172R. We're picking up right where we left off from the last video. The pre-flight inspection is complete, so let's hop inside and get going. As a couple notes, I'm going off a real-world checklist, ones that I've taken pictures of from a real 172R, because with the A2A checklist they got most of the stuff, but they miss some little things here and there that aren't vital to the safety of flight, but they're little things that you would want to check in the real world. And so I'm going to go off of those. The link to those pictures, to those checklists, are in the description below. And also is a link to the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. If there's anything we covered today that you want more in-depth knowledge of, I recommend just doing a search through there or look at the table of contents and read up on it. And it's a great free resource from the FAA. So starting with the before starting engine checklist. Pre-flight inspection is complete. Passenger briefing. I would just tell passengers they're looking out for airplanes, other airplanes. Just point them out to me when they see them. I let them know where the fire extinguisher is. Pull the pin, squeeze the handle. I let them know how to operate the doors, and I let them know that the passengers in the back will get out first because our seats are pushed forward. Once they get out, we'll scoot our seats back and egress safely away from the airplane. That's a basic passenger briefing. Seats and seat belts adjust and latched. Brakes test and set. So we'll take the parking brake off. We can push the brakes in and out like this. And in the real plane, you'd be able to feel pressure. If you don't feel pressure moving the brakes forward, then there's no hydraulic fluid in the lines and the brakes won't work. Avionics power switch is off. Circuit breakers check in. These are the circuit breakers. In the real world, you just run your hands over them. In this sim, I've had a couple of them pop, and it can be hard to tell if they do or not from this view. And so with track IR, you can just lean forward and look down like that to get a good profile. If you don't have track IR, right control and backspace, you hold those down, that'll scoot you forward. And then you can just pan down and you get a good view of them. Hit control, left control and space, that should be the default for recentering your view, and then you can pan down from there. Okay, electrical equipment is off. These are the switches down here. Fuel selector valve, left tank. Now we do left tank for starting, right tank for taxi, and both for taking off to make sure that fuel is actually flowing from the left tank and the right tank, so that on takeoff, if the engine fails, you can just put the fuel selector valve to one of these two positions in case the both feeding isn't working properly. Okay, so starting engine, throttle, open 1/4 inch, mixture idle cutoff, propeller area, clear visually and verbally. So we look outside, we yell out the window, clear prop, ignition key insert, there's the key, master switch on. We don't need the flaps going up yet. Okay, master switch on, rotating beacon on, that's BCN down here. Now cold start, auxiliary fuel pump on, mixture 3 to 5 gallons per hour, then idle cutoff, auxiliary fuel pump off. That's the priming procedure for cold start. So you're going to turn the fuel pump on, you're going to push the mixture in and watch for this needle to rise to 3 to 5 gallons per hour. Once the needle stabilizes, pull the mixture back out, turn the fuel pump off. Mixture full rich, you see the needle rise, stabilize, pull the mixture back out to idle cutoff, fuel pump off. And now you just hold the brakes and turn the ignition to start. And so in the sim, I'll put the mouse over here, I'll click and drag to the right to the starting position. When the cylinders start firing is when you smoothly advance the mixture to full, just like that. Okay, we advance the mixture, let off the starter, bring in the throttle a bit to help bring it to 1000 RPM. Headset in. We check our temperature, which isn't going to move yet. Pressure is in the green arc within 30 seconds, or we shut the engine down. Vacuum in the green-ish. Ammeter is showing a positive charge because the alternator is working with the engine now. And fuel quantity. And then we're going to want to lean the mixture on the ground to avoid fouling the spark plugs. You just pull the mixture back slowly until you hear rough running engine, and then advance the mixture just a little bit. There we go. Now we'll advance it a bit. And it's running smooth enough. And so this makes it so not too much fuel gets to the engine to build up carbon on the spark plugs. From here on the checklist, we're down through mixture, throttle, oil pressure, ammeter, navigation lights as required. This is the nav light switch. We don't need it during the daytime. It's not required in the daytime. And depending on the type of nav lights you have, you won't see them in the daytime. Maybe some high power LEDs you might see, but regular nav lights on these planes you won't see in the daytime. They're required at nighttime, an hour before sunset, an hour after sunrise. Alright, so flaps up. Just drag that up or hit F5. Avionics power switch on. Transponder to ALT, or to standby. There's a new thing in the real world where, at least at towered airports, they're just having you leave the transponder on ALT. Not quite sure about the uncontrolled fields yet. Radios set and listen to ATIS or AWAS. So the radios up here, you'd have your ground control or your common traffic advisory frequency at an untowered field like this. So this would be 2305 at Yuba County Airport. And then the AWAS is 1847, and this is COM2, so you come up here to click this to listen to COM2. These are your audio selects. This chooses what you're going to listen to. So we're default to listen on COM1, and we listen COM2.
Kilo, Mike, Yankee, Victor, automated weather observation, 1437 Zulu. Wind calm.
Wind calm.
Visibility 19er.
19 miles visibility.
Clear.
Sky clear.
Temperature 10 Celsius. Dew point 8 Celsius. Altimeter 3010.
Altimeter 3010. That's the barometric pressure outside, and this is how we set the altimeter. So 301, and then this line here is 0. Every tick mark, every dash here is 0.02. So this is 3010. If it was 3016, it'll be 246, just like that. That's 3018, 3020. So this is 3010, the current altimeter setting. Alright, now we move to the before taxiing checklist. Fuel selector right tank. Flight instruments, check and set. What we do for this, come to the 6 back here, 0 once, because airspeed should be 0. Blue up, brown down. Make sure the orange airplane is on the white line. Altimeter set, we just did, and it lines up with the field elevation of 60 feet. We check 0 twice on the vertical speed indicator because we're not moving anywhere. We make sure the heading indicator is set, aligned with the compass. On track IR, you can just move your head over to look at it. And if you don't have track IR, holding right control, right shift, and enter will scoot you over. You can zoom in and take a look at it. Right now we're on it's showing a heading of 321. This is 300, 310, 320, that's 33. So 32, 321. And press control, left control and space, and that'll recenter the view. Zoom out, pan down. And so the heading indicator we set to 3, 2, 1, which is right about there. And then the winds are calm, so we can take either runway 14 or 32. And so what you do is you bring the heading bug to the runway you're gonna depart on, and you'll see why later. So we'll take runway 32. So put the heading bug in 32. Turn coordinator, no flag. This is an electric instrument, and if there's no electricity going to it, you'll see this off flag. So you always want to make sure you got that off flag. Now the avionics scream at us again because we suck with the power. Okay, so that's the flight instruments check and set. And then contact ground control is the next thing. This is a non-towered field, so we would just make a radio call on the CTAF frequency saying something like Marysville traffic, Skyhawk, 74 Hotel, General Aviation Parking, Taxi 32 Marysville. So we're going to get going with taxiing, and on the taxi check you see with the checklist it says brakes check, nose wheel steering check, turn instruments check. And so these are all things that we're going to be doing on the move. The first thing we're going to do is test the brakes. So we'll start moving, and then we apply the brakes to make sure they actually work. The next thing that's going to be checked is to make sure the turn coordinator and the heading indicator are moving the proper directions. And so as we round this turn here, left wing down, ball to the right, and the headings are going to smaller headings. You turn left, you get smaller headings, you turn right, you get bigger headings. So as we roll into this taxiway, we'll overshoot it a bit, so that it'll force us to go right a bit. So now we get right wing down, ball to the left, and we're getting bigger heading numbers. That's how you check your turn instruments. So now we taxi down to where we're going to do the run-up. Some airports have a dedicated area for run-ups, some don't. And so you can either just pull to the side of the taxiway, or you can pull into a parking spot near the end of the runway. That's what we do when we go to this runway at this airport. And so we'll just pull in here. And we'll bring the throttle to 1000 RPM, and we'll apply the parking brake. And now we go to the before takeoff checklist. Brakes set. I got the parking brake, fuel selector valve on both. Flight control is free and correct. What this means, the free part means that there's no binding, they're moving smoothly through their full range of motion. And correct means that the controls are moving the correct directions. If you don't have track IR, you can hold shift and backspace. That brings your head down. You can see the ailerons. Now, the aileron will be up in the direction that your thumb is pointing. So when you're holding your stick or your yoke, just have your thumb going up naturally and move the stick to the right, and the right aileron will be up. If you move the stick to the left aileron is up, so the right aileron is down, as you can see here. And then recenter the view, look back, pull the stick or yoke back, and you see the elevator is up. Move it forward, and it goes down. Left rudder and right rudder. So that's the flight controls free and correct. Now trim set for takeoff. It's at this mark here, lines up with the takeoff marking there. Fuel quantity check. We have about 15 gallons, and now we do the run up. And so we'll go full rich for this. And it says throttle 1800. We're going to check the engine instruments, oil temperature, pressure, vacuum ammeter, then the annunciator panel. So bring the throttle up to 1800. Now we check oil temperature is in the green, pressure is in the green, vacuum ammeter, slight charge. You don't want it to be negative or the alternator's not working. Fuel quantity. We'll check the annunciator panel by dragging it up to test. All the lights are on. When we release it, the appropriate lights remain on. This is the electric pitch trim. It'll go off in a second. There it is. So there's no issues up here. And now we do a magneto check. There's two magnetos. We check the right one, 2 clicks left. Get about 100 RPM drop. Now it's a little shaky. What we can do to correct that is lean the mixture out, and add some throttle. And what this does, leaning the mixture is going to increase the temperature a bit in the cylinder, and that'll help burn off the carbon buildup that's on that spark plug. And so we won't sit here and do that all day. So I'll bring the mixture back to both, bring this to 1800. So we check the right mag, 100 RPM drop, back to both. You check it goes back to 1800. The left mag, another 100 RPM drop, but it's still shaky, so I would sit here and burn off the mags a bit. Back to both. And then we bring the throttle to the idle stop to make sure the engine idles. And then to 1000 RPM. And this is where I'd lean the mixture again. Gotta lean the mixture to avoid that carbon buildup. Alright, so back onto the checklist, we're on number 9. Throttle friction lock adjust, that's for the real world radios and avionics set. We've got that. Flight instruments, check and set, 0 once, blue up, brown down, altimeter set, 0 twice, heading indicator set, turn coordinator no flag. Flaps set for takeoff, normal takeoff is 0 degrees flaps for this plane. Takeoff briefing review, simple one would just be for this long of a runway. If we're not lifting off by halfway down, we're going to abort the takeoff. Transponder set to ALT for altitude reporting. Autopilot off, landing light, strobe light on. Landing light, strobe light on. Seats and seatbelts check secure. Cabin doors and windows closed and locked. Alright, so now we're going to taxi to the runway because we're all ready for takeoff now. Now once we get lined up on the runway, you want to use your rudder pedals to maintain directional control just like you were while taxiing. It's going to take a little bit more right rudder as you get faster and faster, and it's going to take some right rudder in the climb out as well. We're gonna ease the stick or your yoke back just a little bit once we get to about 55 knots, and then you want to accelerate and climb out at 80 knots. So right before we get onto the runway, we check left and right for traffic, and one extra trick is lights, camera, action. Make sure you got your lights the way you want it. Camera is transponder to ALT. Action is your movable parts. So flaps up, mixture rich, trim set for takeoff, fuel selector valve both. And then now we're ready for takeoff. I'll put the control yoke up so you can kind of see what's going on. And then for a runway incursion point, we set the heading bug to the heading of the runway that we're taking, 3-2, so that when we line up on the runway, if the heading bug is at the top of the heading indicator, then we know we're on the right runway. And there it is. So now we slowly but smoothly advance it to full power, right up to the stop, just like that. I usually do a quick check of oil temperature and pressure and power setting. Airspeed is alive. 55 knots, we ease back just a little bit until it comes off just like that, and then relax that back pressure a bit and make sure you're holding the proper amount of right rudder to keep that ball centered on the turn coordinator. And pitch the nose for 80 knots. And so pitching the nose for 80 knots in this airplane, as you can see, has the nose just below the horizon line like that. And so this is what's called a pitch attitude. Pitch attitude is where you have a relationship between the nose or the engine cowling against the horizon line. or some other reference looking outside visually. Because as a VFR pilot, we fly primarily by looking outside. And so after takeoff, I moved the trim wheel forward just a little bit to relieve the control pressure. And we're keeping the nose pitched up for 80 knots, and we're maintaining runway heading. So we'll go ahead and level off. And so this isn't a complex airplane by any means. There's no gear to bring up, there's no power reductions for climb. But once we level off like this, you can see the RPM starts getting close to that red line. So we'll pull the throttle back a little bit to about 2200 RPM. Right about there. And now what's happening is we're going faster, and as you can see, the airplane is naturally going to want to pitch up. And so we'll level off at 1,300 feet. And now we're going to hold the stick forward to maintain that altitude. And so now that we're having to hold the stick or the yoke forward to maintain the altitude, this is where trim comes into play. And so the key to remember is move the trim wheel in the direction that you're holding the control. So holding the control forward will move the trim forward a bit. And as you do that, you want to relax the pressure. You always want to fly the airplane with the stick or the yoke, keeping it at the 1300. And then as you move the trim, every time you move the trim, just kind of relax the pressure a bit on the control, but then immediately bring it back to where it needs to be. And you'll eventually feel how you're having to push less and less, and stop moving the trim wheel when the stick is essentially centered and you're not pushing on it. So I've let go of the stick right now, and pitch-wise the airplane isn't going up or down. There's no roll trim in this plane, aileron trim, so I still have to keep my hand on the stick for left and right adjustment, but I'm not having to make pitch adjustments like that. And so this essentially concludes a basic takeoff in the 172. We'll conclude the video here and continue on with some other lessons in the next videos. So leave some feedback down below, and I'll see you guys next time.